Hey, Eryn, welcome to the Sisterhood.
Hello. I'm so honored to be here with both of you. Thank you
We're
for having
so
me.
happy to have you. So, Eryn, you sound a little Southern. Where do you live?
I live in Georgia,
Yeah, okay.
South Georgia. I'm from North Georgia, live in South Georgia, but my parents are both from the Midwest. So I'm a hybrid.
Did you grow up in the South or in the Midwest?
No, in the South.
Okay, super fun. And do you have kids?
No kids, no kids, not married, just me and my plants.
Yeah, I love it. That's so great. Well, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So I own a lifestyle company. It's a clothing company. Started off 10 years ago. It's called So Worth Living. And we ship to 50 states, 30 countries, all around the idea of bridging the gap between not talking about our struggles of self worth and talking about it. And we've seen stories of anxiety and depression and self harm to breakups and divorce and circumstantial depression to just so many different stories over the last 10 years.
Okay, can you help fill us in a little bit on how clothing helps
Yeah.
address those conversations? Because
Yeah.
there's a big gap there in my mind
Mhm.
about how that happens.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I was an art director at a nonprofit. It was a leadership development company. I was doing some grunt work and then art direction stuff. And in the midst of it, I decided to pursue music. And so when I started to pursue music, I wanted to create some sort of product that my fans could relate to, something that they could carry for themselves, something that would remind them, inspire them, encourage them. So I came up with this idea of so worth loving, that you are worthy of love. You are so worth loving. And I put my home address on my blog and I said, mail me your personal shirt. I'll spray paint that you're worth loving and I'll mail it back to you for free. I did that for 8 months. And when I learned about apparel is that it is used as a vessel, as a tool, as a deliverer of a message that you are worthy of love. And what I learned is that this community wanted to carry this message so that they could remind other people as they walk through the streets, as well as claiming it for themselves. And so that's kind of how it started, was spray painting like cardboard stencils and fabric spray paint to who knew, a movement of people wanting to carry this message just as much as I did. And so then I quit my job, of course, and decided to pursue it full time and rolling out collections and things like that. But what I learned was when people were mailing me their shirts, they were writing letters of why they felt unworthy of love. So they would bring in a letter of why they were struggling with self worth and include it in their t-shirt that smelled like Downy. And I was so moved. And it really, just to see that vulnerability, people wanted to carry the shirt in a way of a next step to being vulnerable.
Hmm.
Yeah, that
Ma-
is really amazing to accept people's personal items into your own home space, change it, and then send it back to them. I mean, that's very redemptive in a way to say, give me what you have, and I will give you what you're looking for.
Mhm.
That's so Christ-like.
Yeah.
But also, I would imagine for you personally, it was very tender and
Mm.
personal to have people sending clothes that they'd already worn to you, to your home address. That would be very interesting and intense and probably diverse too, the kinds of clothing you received and
Oh, yeah.
sizes and quality and how well worn, if someone's favorite t-shirt that they've had for 10 years versus maybe something new that they bought just to send you. All of that would be
Yes. Yes, exactly, Alexandra. Oh my goodness, it was so funny because I would get these shirts and I would be like, I don't know if fabric spray, like water-based spray paint works on this fabric. So that's how I learned a lot about materials, is because I was Googling different polyesters and different modal fabrics, and what is it? Does it bleed when the fabric spray paint goes on this shirt? Or because I would get, oh my gosh, I remember there were two shirts that I did. and they kind of became like a puffy, like a spread. Like it was was not a clean, it was not a clean spray. And it just spread and it just looked like a blob of So Worth Loving on this shirt. And I just remember being like, okay, I can't go buy this. I can't go buy this shirt. This person's had this shirt for like 10 years. Victoria's Secret doesn't sell it anymore. Or whatever clothing store it was from. So yes, I'm so thankful that you pointed that out, because that is exactly true. There was some pressure to make sure that you're taking care of somebody's product and that's theirs, that maybe it's even like a special t-shirt that's one of their favorites. I received some of those too. And so that's, yeah, it was wild.
Well, it makes so much sense to me because I think we need handholds when it comes to ideas, if that makes sense. Like we
Mm,
need physical objects or something that can represent an idea sometimes. And that really helps us to grab onto that idea and it makes it a little more manifest in our
yeah.
lives. And so it makes actually total sense to me. And maybe that's because I'm super visual and I really like being able to touch things. And like, I like, whether it's burning a paper in a fire to symbolize something or throwing a rock in a lake or, I just really that act of symbolism, of physical
Mhm,
symbolism is really important to me. And so it
mhm,
makes total sense. I would like to hear a little bit about your journey into that message and what that has meant to you and what that has looked like.
hmm. Yeah. When I accidentally started this. So I started So Worth Living. So I didn't come into So Worth Living with this like 5-year business plan and knowing exactly how I'm going to conquer retail. And, my parents, they manufactured furniture for a little over 40 years. And so I had that as a model for me. Entrepreneurship was a model for me. But bringing message and retail, mission and retail together was something I was very new to. Going into it, we would do these pop-ups and events and tours where we would meet people in different places, coffee shops, boutiques, where dry bars, I mean, everywhere, to just do these events and connect with people one-on-one, to just have conversations about self-worth. And I there was something that just continued to move. I was kind of when I started learning that I'm just an extremely empathetic person and I can absorb, if I don't protect and create boundaries, I can absorb somebody else's emotions very easily. And so I'm 24, 25, 26 when I'm first starting, and just feeling like I have to, almost the savior mentality, I need to help and save and be a hero. And then I realized, no, people just want to have conversations. And so during that time, learning how to carry a mission and know that I'm not the only one that has to carry it, met with learning how to do profit and loss statements, making something sustainable. I hit burnout, and I didn't realize I was hitting burnout until there was a day that somebody shared their story with me, and I felt very numb to it. I
Mhm.
felt um, like I just complacent, just kind of apathetic, even like I would rather have hated the story, right? Because I feel like that's at least a feeling than being apathetic towards it. And I was just kind of like, that's okay. And so that's when I learned, man, I'm on a path of burnout. And really the path of burnout for me was, there was a lot coming after that, which was a divorce and kind of rock bottom, deconstructing my perspective of who God was and wrestling with where I was finding my identity and my self-worth. So Worth Loving has been such a huge piece in my life of learning about self-worth, but then also observing other people learning about it too, which has kind of given me the courage to ask hard questions in that time of burnout and confusion.
Well, I appreciate that and I appreciate you sharing that. And I feel like that story points to resilience and to the place that most of us find ourselves at some point, and that is in a place we don't want to be and in a
Mhm,
place that feels a little bit, whether it's burnout or exhaustion or depression
mhm.
or just deep discouragement. And so, can you talk a little bit about how this idea of self worth actually catapults us into a more resilient life?
That's such a great question. when I kind of, man, I remember coming home one day just so tired and just making poor choices in relationships, with friendship, dating. Um, I wasn't really paying attention to how I was treating myself. I was just reactionary. And then I look up one day in the mirror and I'm like, this does not look like the person that you know deep down that you are, or that you want to become, or you're capable of becoming. Um, when I was looking in the mirror and just kind of, I remember I was like tipsy and old makeup from that day, just came back with hanging out with some girlfriends. And I was just like, Eryn, this is not like, you're not a bad person, but like how you feel about yourself is really like, it's icky. You feel icky. And so I remember making a long list, okay, what do I desire for myself? And so I started writing down the things I just desire, just things I desire in my career and my friendships. What kind of daughter I want to be? What kind of sister do I want to be? What kind of aunt do I want to be? What kind of friend? Like who do I want? Coworker, leader? What kind of person do I want to be? And then I started looking at the choices that I was making, and I noticed they were polar opposite. That was when I recognized my struggle with self-worth, and when I started looking in the actual mirror, but then also like figuratively the inside mirror, the internal mirror. I started looking in and just going, okay, you know these things. You are capable. You are driven. You have been able to do things. Like it was like a pep talk. I was giving myself a pep talk in the midst of anxiety and depression, which if anybody's listening, depression, whether it's circumstantial, like for me, it was circumstantial, getting out of bed, brushing my teeth, shaving my legs, doing the things that are just taking care, just tending to me, just like simple little things. I just didn't want to get out of bed. And so kind of looking at that list, I decided, I was like, okay, I can't conquer it all at once, because I know that I'll just keep shaming myself because I can't overcome all of these things. So I started choosing the things that were just simple, like getting out of bed and brushing my teeth, and then like taking a longer shower to shave my legs, and just doing like little baby milestones for me. And that started shaping more and more, that started shaping my self-worth, but it also just reinforced in me what I believe I was worth, which was a second chance and a more fulfilling and thriving life. And so, uh, resiliency and self-worth. Resiliency, I think sometimes we think that we have to be like, we're going to conquer the list. Like, we're just going to take on the whole list, like we're like, let's just go. But sometimes you're so tired that even just two things on that list seem like a huge hurdle. And so for me, it was giving myself empathy and compassion and grace to go, hey, you did these two things, and that was good enough today. To me, that's self-worth and resiliency.
Yeah. Here at the Open Door Sisterhood, we talk about taking that next step, doing that hard thing. And that's what it is looking at what are the menu of options I have right now. And as someone personally who gets really overwhelmed easily, to be able to break things down and say, okay, I can't tackle that, but I can take one little portion and tackle that. And then that builds my confidence. Okay, then I can take the next step, and I can take the next step. So you're speaking right into that we talk about often here at the Sisterhood. But I think it's a good reminder for us that when we do those things, not only do they help us be productive, but they help us understand that we are capable and that we don't have to be intimidated by the monster that's in front of us. But we can, with care for ourselves and knowing what our boundaries are, just take a little bit at a time. And each little accomplishment is going to build our confidence to move in the next direction and take that bigger step and bigger step.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's looking up at a mountain and thinking, gosh, can I just get to the mountaintop? But instead it's just taking one step at a time in the forest. I just passed that giant tree. Like just acknowledging, like just acknowledging the little baby steps is what gets you to that mountaintop.
Yeah. And what you're saying sounds like celebrating. Like when you take that step to say, I did that. And because I'll speak for myself, sometimes we take that next step and we're just focused on what's the next thing on my to-do list. What's the next person that needs my attention. And we forget to celebrate, wait, I did that I did take that step and it was successful. Yay. Let's just a little bit more yay in our lives.
Yes, yes. And this might sound really extreme, but I remember, I was about $80,000 in debt. And I remember the day that I paid off $6,500 off of my Discover credit card. And, you know, I decided I probably had about that time, about 25,000 left to pay. And to me, that was just another chipping away at a giant pile, and instead of me just being like, oh, you still have 25,000, I celebrated the fact that I could pay off 6,500 in one phone call. And so I rented a Tiki Airstream for the night. It was $60 a night in Atlanta. And I stayed in this little Tiki Airstream to celebrate that I paid. And I actually made the phone call of the Discover card in that Tiki. I know it sounds so extreme, but and you don't have to do extreme things like that. But every now and then, I just think it's so fun to find some moment to celebrate, because life is just hard and we get overwhelmed and we get exhausted by the to-do lists and people pulling at us and needing us constantly, that we do forget to celebrate those things. But that was a fun memory for me, was celebrating in this Tiki Airstream.
That's so awesome. I adore that. I think that's so great. I'm big on celebration. Eryn, I do want us to chat. I feel like this idea of self-worth is a really hard, vague concept to make real. And I think people are like, yes, it's just, there's so much talk. There's so many Pinterest pins and Instagram pins about like, know your worth and, but what does that mean in our thinking? Like, how do we translate that into our daily thought life and really make it real?
Mm. I love that you touched on that, because it's like self-worth is not a Hobby Lobby like wooden sign, that like it's not that easy that we see. I think the way to make it real is you have to be honest with yourself in your internal talk, whether it's comparing your body, comparing your personality, comparing accomplishments, comparing to-do lists, comparing homes, comparing what are you saying to yourself on a daily basis? What thoughts truly are coming in that if somebody really did see them, would you I don't want to say that would you be embarrassed, because I think that's a shaming statement, but would that help you see more light on how you talk about yourself? For me, the way that I had to be really honest with how I felt was making that list of choices I was making, things that I was saying to myself, statements I was carrying, statements I had carried since I was 7 that I just had never told anybody, maybe my therapist, but I told my therapist, but I didn't really do the work on dealing with them at all. And so I think what it is for me, I got a dry erase marker and I wrote on my mirror every thought that came to my mind that I had been carrying. And I got really honest. And we get scared to be honest, because if we are honest about what we think then that we are those thoughts, even though we're already thinking them. If we put them out in the light, that might mean that we're verifying that thought is true. And so I think it's so important to bring those thoughts to light and know that you are not verifying that it's true, but you're giving yourself an invitation for healing in those thoughts. And that contributes to your self-worth, and it contributes to how you see yourself and how you treat others, and how you serve, and how you are a mom or a sister or a friend, and how you can show up and sit in people's mess. Because we are called to love others, but we also have to love ourselves fully. And if we don't understand those parts that are scary, the shadow side parts that nobody sees, that nobody hears, we can't fully sit in somebody else's mess. We can halfway do it, and we can do it to a certain extent. But I think it's so important to identify what those thoughts are. And I wrote on the dry erase marker, with the dry erase marker on the mirror, every thought. And then I grabbed my Bible and I spoke truth over it. And I rebuked every statement. And I said, I'm reclaiming that. That is not me. That is not who God made me to be. That is not how God thinks about me. And, I love in Jeremiah, it says in 29:11, it says, for I know the plans I have for you. But in the King James Version, it says, for I know the thoughts I think towards you. And so I just kept praying, God, reveal to me what those thoughts are, because these are my thoughts. It's that I'm self-righteous, or that I'm too much, or I'm too skinny, or I'm not curvy enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. Whatever it was, that had been even worse statements that you'd probably have to bleep out on this podcast that have been spoken over me. And I had to just rebuke them and say, these are not how you think of me, Lord. And I just pray. I pray what it says, that you know the thoughts you think towards me. And I pray that I will know what those thoughts are, and that you will replace my thoughts with yours over and over. And I think that helps you to reclaim what truly self-worth is, and not an inspirational quote on Pinterest.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Would you say that those thoughts came easily to you? Because I'm wondering if there are some women who have some core beliefs about who they are, but they can't articulate them. They maybe are so deeply pushed down into their core, and maybe they are things that they carry from childhood, and they don't even realize they're there until maybe something triggers it. But
Mhm.
how would you suggest women articulate those thoughts? Just
Mhm.
start writing down things as they come to mind. Yeah. How would you suggest that women who maybe have to pull some of those layers back do that?
Yeah. It didn't come natural to me. I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, so suppressing pain is something that I do a really good job of, in my past too. And so, my therapist, I went to a trauma therapist, and he helped me a lot into revealing some of those things. So I think that we need somebody to help us. I don't think that we are meant to do it alone. I think community, friends, and a really great therapist, safe people, one or two people, and not a large group, can help pull out those things. But I also think reflecting on your attitude, honestly, like
Mm.
reflecting on how you treat people, reflection, I think, is a starting point. For me, I would take my journal, and I still do this. Well, I don't think we ever arrive. I just want to make sure that I share that. Like, we never arrive of fully just being able to 100% walk in our self-worth of how God sees us. It is a daily battle of our mind. And the enemy is on a prowl to confirm every single lie that might pop into our head. He sets out to confirm it with people, with circumstances, all the time. So it is a battle to monitor what your thoughts are. And that's why I love what it says in Philippians 4:8. I want to think what is lovely and what is true and what is honorable. So I think it's moderating some of your thoughts, identifying them, seeing what they are, chipping away. I mean, in my journal, I would just start asking, like, in the beginning, I was angry at God, and I was very far away from him. And I had to get very honest with my feelings and my anger, and realize that God is so confident that no feeling and no insecurity that I have, or that I'm not acknowledging, is too big for him to help me process. And so I would sit in my journal, and I would say, Lord, I don't even know what to pray, but Holy Spirit, I know that you are in me. Like, you know what to pray when I have no idea what to pray. Give me one word. Give me a word. Give me a thought. Reveal something in me that I am thinking, or that I'm deep subconsciously thinking, that I don't even realize I'm doing. And he would do that, and he still does that. And so I think, it doesn't come easy sometimes. The things that have been told over us since we were even 4 and 7 and 13, those thoughts, we can suppress them and be so far away from them. For me, it was just a circumstance that kind of brought all of that to a head. But yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's good. Gives people some steps.
Mm.
I do want to touch a little bit on, so much of our self-worth is often words or labels that people have put on us. So, what role should we let people play in that? And what role should we not let people play in that?
Mm, that's a great question. I have so many thoughts and thinking through all of them. I think that it's very important to identify what is a safe person before you go and seek out somebody to speak over your life. A safe person, a healthy mentor, is somebody that is not projecting any of their thoughts on you, but lets you process them. Like a really good therapist is somebody that asks you questions instead of giving you all of the answers. So somebody that speaks over you about your self-worth or your identity or like the things you're struggling with, or maybe a circumstance that you're going through. Somebody that is willing to just listen and help you process by asking you questions. I had some friends that were good people, wonderful people, but maybe not qualified to speak into some areas. Maybe because of their own insecurities, their own work that they have not done inside, that I was impressionable and I allowed for them to speak over me. And I started living out of kind of what they said because I didn't really know what was safe and what was healthy. It wasn't until I started reading the book Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud or Safe People, started recognizing what are unhealthy behaviors. Borderline personality disorder is I had a relationship with somebody that has borderline personality disorder, and they don't treat it. And so for the longest time, I thought I was always the problem, but I allowed them to speak in. And so I think you have to identify what is safe and healthy before you just allow somebody to come through. But then also knowing that just because they say something doesn't mean it's the final word. And you have the control of whether or not they are going to make an impress on you or not.
Yeah. Those two books you mentioned, I think are really important if you're trying to discern if people, I mean, really for life, they're just great life skills. But I think especially if you're trying to discern, and I think there's another one out called Toxic People.
Yes.
That's also really helpful. I haven't read that one yet, but I've heard good things
By
about it.
Gary Thomas.
By Gary
Yes.
Thomas.
It's a very good book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Eryn, thank you. This has been such a great conversation. Do you have any last words of encouragement for women today?
Mm. I want to encourage the woman that's listening right now that feels like maybe we've shaken up some of the dirt that's going on inside of them, and maybe they feel uncomfortable or they feel really flawed, unqualified. Maybe it's bringing up in some insecurities or some fear of feeling defected or infected. I want to speak to her and just encourage her that nothing that she feels is going to dictate her self-worth, because she's already so worthy of God's love and recovery for her life, whether it's in small circumstances or a big circumstance that she's going through. And I know that whatever, maybe a thought popped up in her head from when she was younger, or maybe what her husband said or her ex said that's maybe come into her mind. Um, I just want to encourage her that she is not those thoughts, and God, his heart broke. His heart broke when she started believing some of those things, and it broke in a desire to have an invitation to be with her in processing some of those things that are stirred up. And I just want to encourage that person that you're not defected, you're not unqualified, and you're not your circumstances, and you're not your thoughts. And to just, I know it sounds florally, maybe it might sound florally, especially if you're jaded, or or you're just numb. Like I said, apathetic. Like what I was apathetic. Um, but I just want to encourage her to just take a pen to her journal and to remind herself to give her some breath and
Yeah.
some grace.
Thank you, Eryn. So good. Well, we are so excited about your book, So Worth Loving. And if people want more of what you just talked about, that is the place to go. So thank you, Eryn. We wish you the best. And we just so appreciate your message to women and all people in the world. Thank you.
Thank y'all for having me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.